Ms. D. Jones.
Yes.
Ms. S. Jones.
Yes.
Mr. Lane.
Yes.
Ms. Miller is excused. Dr. Roberts.
Yes.
Mrs. Fowler. Mrs. Fowler is on the conference call.
Yes. Natalie, are you there?
I'm here, I'm sorry, I was on mute.
Mrs. Rhodey Collins.
Here.
We have a quorum.
We'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. Good evening and welcome to our Spirit of Excellence Award. This is a special time where we recognize outstanding students and staff who are truly making an impact. Tonight we are celebrating a group of students who saw their community being overwhelmed by sadness and negativity and decided to bring some light into darkness. The choir at Soldan International Studies High School worked with their teachers and school leaders to arrange Taking Back Our Community, a concert to uplift spirits and give students an outlet for social justice. At this time, I would like to ask Kevin Mansko, Soldan's choir director, to come to the podium to share more information about this special event and introduce the students here tonight who helped organize it.
Good evening, everybody. Distinguished members of the board and everybody that's here tonight, my principal and assistant principal, Dr. Kason, Dr. Trent. Can you all hear me now? Good evening, everybody. Let me try this again. Distinguished members of the board and everybody that's in attendance, especially my principal and assistant principal, Dr. Kason and Dr. Trent. I am Kevin Mansko, as she stated. I am the music teacher at Soldan High School. I'm not going to stand before you long, because I'm going to let the kids do the talking, but the kids came to me after there was a jamboree in the community and there was violence that happened in that community, and they wanted to do something positive to put a positive light on young people. And so they came to me and said, can we do a concert and can we really highlight the good that young people are doing? So me and several teachers that are here tonight got with the students and got with some different organizations, and with the permission of our principal, we were able to organize a phenomenal concert that was held in the community, and it was really uplifting and inspiring. And having said that, I'm going to have a few of my kids come over here and that are from the choir and kind of speak on their experience about that and why they wanted to do it. You all can give them a hand.
How y'all doing? Okay, my name is Shakur Meredith. I am a senior at Soldan High School, and like Mansko said, we did host a community choir, just to, I'm sorry, I gotta get my thoughts together. I'm gonna just say what I got out of it. So I led 2 songs at our community back, getting everything back together. And to see everybody having a good time and just being real uplifted and happy, it just really made me happy that, we spoke to the people and a lot of people came out and supported us. So that was really just something that really made me happy. It was a good experience. It's something that I would definitely do again.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Shakur. I'm a senior over at Soldan, and I decided to be a part of this group to get things together for the show so that people could know that students my age, everybody around my age, aren't all negative and aren't all reckless and all of that. So I just really wanted to shine light on the good that students can do and the happiness that people can bring people with music. Something that I know I can do. And I know that God gave me a gift, so I would rather use that positively rather than let it go to waste. And with bringing it together, we had meetings and a lot of things to set everything up. It was people who turned us down, like churches and venues that turned us down, and we just requested for other places, which our teacher helped us with. But it was more than us, but it was happy. We were happy that it could happen and come out the way that it did. Thank you.
My name is Sanaa Lewis. I'm a junior, and the reason I did this is because a lot of violence has been going on in our communities just in general, and hearing that one of my closest friends was involved in the injuries that happened, it made me realize that things need to change for us. Now, knowing that
I'm sorry.
but knowing that happened, it really took a toll on me because I've known him since I was a little kid. And hearing that him and his cousin were injured, it really affected me. And I wanted to change that for other kids happening now. I didn't want it to affect more kids, even though it's still happening. I feel like we still did a difference with the violence that's going on now. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Ali Paul. I'm a senior at Sodan High School. And as well as being along with the choir, I was also a part with the art program that made and published the flyer that we set out for the program. With this program, we just wanted to do something that, like Mansco said, shed a little positivity on a negative outcome of a also positive event. The events that followed the Jamboree is definitely something that nobody thought or could even think would happen. So we wanted to just put together something that could take back the community, shine a light on something that the good that we are doing for the youth at Sodan High School. So, thank you.
Hi, my name is Lisa Jones. I am a junior at Sodan International Studies High School. The reason why I did this was because I didn't want to be another hashtag. Too many people that the same color of skin as me have, died for. Foolish reasons, and I wanted to show that all of us are not like that. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming to share with us tonight. It sounds like it was a very beautiful event. And we're glad to see students taking the initiative and standing up for things that that are important for them.
And I'd like to follow up on the President's comments. I was in attendance at that Jamboree, and it was awesome, to say the least, and you are to be commended for that effort. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll do a picture with the group. So if I would ask the board to follow Ms. Pierce's direction.
We can get everybody to really squeeze in together. I can still see you. Okay. Here we go. Everybody ready? 3, 2, 1. Cool. Let's do a couple more just to make sure. Thank you.
Wait. Give y'all wait.
Slow down. Got it.
We have a number of invited guests tonight, so I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Adams.
So at this point in time, we have our external audit, and so I'm asking Mrs. Wesley, who's the chair of the board, to come forward with Ruben Brown to give a presentation on the most recent audit. Obviously, the board will be hopefully voting on this tonight, but they must vote before the 31st. Mr. Lane is also a member of the committee, can speak to any kind of questions that the board might have relative to the hour-and-a-half presentation that occurred earlier today, followed by Treasurer Shakur Jones that we invited tonight to come to do a presentation as well. First of all, Mrs. Wesley.
Thank you, Dr. Adams. This is still on, correct? Can you hear me? Okay. All right, the audit committee met today for the first time since the charter had been approved by the board at the last meeting in November. The purpose of the audit committee's meeting today was to meet with the external auditors, Ruben Brown and those associated with them. That is an arrangement that by state statute is done under the mayor's office to hire Ruben Brown. And they met with us and discussed with us their findings. The audit committee was unable to review the documents prior to the meeting, and I don't believe that the board got the audit information in your board book either. Is that correct? So Mr. Winter from Ruben Brown spent a lot of time going over those documents with us as a committee, and I know that he's here tonight to do some presentation work for the board as well. I can say that the committee did not find any process reasons why the audit should not be accepted by the board. The district has worked hard to provide the information to the auditors, and they were able to get the information they needed to comply with this audit. And for now, I'll turn it over to Jeff Winter, who will talk about the audit itself, and then come back if you have any questions.
And you do have that presentation on your table with a rubber band around it, so everyone does have it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wesley. Madam President, members of the board, again, my name is Jeff Winter. I'm a partner with Ruben Brown and responsible for the St. Louis Public Schools audit engagement, which we are in the process of concluding. As was mentioned, we met with the audit committee just prior to this meeting for an hour and a half. I don't envision taking that kind of time with you this evening, but I am here to present at a high level the results of the audit, as well as answer and entertain any questions you may have. I know this is the first presentation to the Board of Education for this fiscal audit. So again, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. Could you talk to the mic, please? Yeah, of course. Okay. Is that better? No. All right, I'll try again. Okay, very good. Well, so thank you for the opportunity to present today. I also want to thank the Finance Department management, who we work with very closely throughout the audit. They're hiding over there. Ms. Banks, the CFO, and Ron Martin, the Fiscal Control Manager. Without their assistance and cooperation, we would be unable to conduct our procedures, and there were no limitations placed on our ability to do our work. I do apologize for you not getting the information in advance. It was sent to management last week on Thursday with the intention of it being distributed to you in advance of this meeting. We are working with final drafts. We are not anticipating any changes to any of the documents that you have in front of you. The reason we are working with drafts is we are waiting on the report. We were waiting on the report of the St. Louis Public Schools Foundation, which is a separate entity and audited by different auditors than us. And the audit information, selected audit information from that audit is required to be included in St. Louis Public Schools financial statements under generally accepted accounting principles. So that information was just received last week, late, and we will include that information and issue final reports by next week without any issues or problems. And again, we do not anticipate any changes to any of the information you have. You have 3 documents in front of you. I'll be focusing on this document here, which is the results of the audit, the report to governance, which is the Board of Education. And I'll just briefly go through some of the information. First off, I just want you to know this is a significant engagement. The audit, we spend 2 weeks out here in the June timeframe doing preliminary audit procedures. We start the year-end procedures right after Labor Day and conclude around the first week of November, and then obviously the time since then has been done wrapping up, getting open items issued, and finalizing all the reports. A significant amount of time and effort is put into this audit engagement. We audit the financial statements of the St. Louis Public Schools as well as compliance with federal programs. We do not audit individual departments or processes. Our primary responsibility is the audit of the financial statements and compliance with federal programs for the school. We are assisted by Randall and Associates, a partner that has been working with us since we've been contracted to do the audit of St. Louis Public Schools. They are a DBE participant and participate in the required percentages and have been a friend of Reuben Brown's and participated in the audit committee meeting this afternoon and is a very important part of our team. As I said, we are charged to audit the financial statements of St. Louis Public Schools for the year ended June 30th, 2019, and our audit is performed in accordance with professional auditing standards that require us to plan and perform the audit to obtain reasonable but not absolute assurance that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects, and also to obtain enough audit evidence in order for us to render an opinion on those financial statements. And if you turn to page 3 of the document, if anybody is following along, we issued unmodified clean opinions on the financial statements of St. Louis Public Schools for June 30th, 2009, which is the highest level of assurance that can be rendered from an external auditor on the financial reports. And we also issued an unmodified opinion on compliance with regard to the major federal programs that were audited in connection with the audit of federal awards that are spent by the school district. The financial statements are what's part of a document called a comprehensive annual financial report. That report includes not only the financial statements, but information from management about the school district, as well as statistical information showing 10 years of trend information for various financial and demographic information about the school. That comprehensive annual financial report is submitted to agencies such as the Government Finance Officers Association and the Association of School Business Officials for certification in their Excellence in Financial Reporting program. The document has to meet the criteria of accounting standards as well as the requirements and criteria of these awarding agencies, and I'm pleased to report that the school has received the Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting for the last 23 years, and we do not anticipate that 2019 will be any different. I just wanted to point out a couple things. In connection with our federal audit, we did have one finding. It was an internal control finding determined to be what is called a deficiency in internal control, and it had to do with maintaining certain documentation and support in relationship to certain bids that were entered into with federal monies. An entity that receives federal funds and procures has to go through a process to determine that all vendors are not on the suspension and debarred list. None of the vendors were suspended or debarred, but the process in place, the internal controls and processes in place did not include documentation that analysis was done by the school board. They've responded to that and changed their policies, and we will look at this again next year when we follow up on current year recommendations for current year recommendations this year, but they will be prior year recommendations next year, and we'll report on the implementation of that. We also had a variety of other best practice recommendations dealing with the recording of revenue and receivables, cybersecurity protocol, and those are included in the document that is the report to governance. We also included some financial information to show the results of operations and financial condition of the school for 2019. I will say that with regard to the financial operations of the school, revenues are down, but corresponding expenditures are also down, so that the school operations operated at a surplus as opposed to a deficit. That shows good conscious expenditure control and good fiscal controls, and reacting to the environment that exists with regard to revenue constraints based on enrollment and other issues that revenue is based upon. I don't want to go through the documents in detail, but in addition to the report to governance, you do have the actual comprehensive annual financial report, as well as a separate report on the compliance, which includes the federal compliance that I refer to, as well as state compliance, which consists of procedures performed in connection with attendance and transportation statutes, and there were no issues related to the audits of those state compliance items either. So that concludes my remarks. I would be more than happy to answer any questions. I do realize you have not had a chance to review the information. And so if anyone has any questions subsequent to this evening, I would be more than happy to entertain those. But with that, I open it up to questions at this point.
At this point in time, I don't think there are any questions. What we will likely be asking, administration will be asking the board to do is to accept the audit presentation in a vote tonight. If the board does not feel comfortable doing so tonight, we can do it at the work session on the 17th, which will give you an opportunity to look at it. But it must be signed and delivered to DESI by the 31st of December. We won't have any other meetings unless the board is willing to have a special meeting just for this single purpose. And I think the recommendation of the committee is that it is accepted prior to that date. Ms. Wesley?
Yeah, it's not uncommon for us to present a final draft at a presentation prior to dotting all the i's and crossing all the t's. Again, apologies with respect to getting the information to you in advance. That was the intention, and the state statutes require that reflected in the minutes of the Board of Education, the acceptance of the audit is required.
And if I may just say, you know, this is our committee's first chance going through this, and it's also you as a board's first time going through this. But one thing as you consider that decision is that I can tell you that the audit committee was satisfied that the process was done and done well. And that while there are issues in here, as you spend time, that you may see that issues were revealed that you want to address, I'd suggest that that's a separate issue from whether the audit itself is correct and follow the procedures. And so I do think that you should all consider what the audit revealed, but the audit itself will not change. It is what you will do with the information that you find when you do have time to study this. That may require some further action on your part, but we do feel comfortable that the audit itself is an appropriate document, and we would suggest you accept that.
Did you say, excuse me, can anybody ask questions? Did you say that you guys were?
Sorry, the questions are from the board.
Wow. Well, he said they was operating at a surplus. Right. And what I know is that our kids are not getting their resources. Nope. What?
The questions are from the board to our presenters.
All right.
Thank you.
What? Like I
Mr. Lane.
said, he said something about a surplus. Why y'all can't respond to the people? Y'all ain't got no questions. All y'all sitting up there. We elected y'all.
Yeah.
We put y'all in office.
Yep.
I got a question.
Yep.
What you mean
Mr.
surplus?
Lane, do you have a question?
Where are resources for our
Ma'am.
kids?
Mr. Lane has
Somebody
a
answer a
question.
question. What?
Don't sign that. Right.
Mr. Lane.
So I don't have a question. One thing that I'll tell the board, so from our meeting, in addition to everything that Ms. Westling said, the only thing that we're still waiting on that won't change what we have right now is just the final report from the
Foundation.
Right, from the St. Louis Foundation. So that would just be a different number, different numbers. However, the prior year's information is included in the packet. So we do have that information. And again, like Ms. Westling said, if we didn't accept and went to our work session, and that is the recommendation of the committee to accept, it wouldn't change what was done. Even if we have issues with it, we would probably still accept and then just discuss the issues that we wanted to take on forward.
Yeah, the findings and the recommendations are a byproduct of the audit process. The audit of the financial statements and the audit of compliance is what it is. I mean, it is the representation of management of St. Louis Public Schools with regard to the financial numbers. So that's not going to change. So that's why boards typically accept an audit as opposed to approve an audit, because it's not really something that you can approve. It's done and it exists in its own manner. So.
How y'all gonna accept something y'all haven't even read? Y'all ain't even read it. He said,
So are there any
understand
further
this.
questions for Mr. Winter? So what we will do then is when we get to the voting portion of our meeting during the consent agenda, if there is a motion to accept the report, we will do that this evening. If there is no motion at that time, we will do that on the 17th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this point in time, I ask the Treasurer Shakur Jones to come forward for a presentation regarding college kids. They have a copy. I'll provide them a copy. It's an additional one. They don't have that one, so yeah. They got the PowerPoint presentation, but I think that's a separate one.
Good evening. I'm Tashara Jones, the treasurer of the city of St. Louis, and I want to thank Superintendent Adams for inviting me to speak to you this evening. I have a couple of my staff members here with me this evening, my chief of staff and counsel, Jared Boyd, as well as the coordinator of the College Kids Program, Ms. Barbara Davis. Next slide. Is there a clicker? I'm sorry, what?
Up under.
Up under. Oh, hey. Okay. Great. So the mission of the College Kids Program is to improve college access and attainment among youth, to increase assets for low to moderate income families, and to promote the use of safe and affordable mainstream financial products. And our vision is that every child will have hope and a path to post-secondary education, no matter what they choose, because they can use these funds not only for 2 or 4 year colleges, but also vocational or technical school, as well as union apprenticeships. Brief overview, our first cohort was in school year 2015, so yes, we are 5 years old. This is an opt-out program for all kindergartners in district and charter schools. We put in the first $50 with parking revenue. So every time you pay a parking ticket, every time you feed a meter or park in a city-owned garage, portion of that revenue goes to fund this program. We are over 16,200 accounts and counting. That's with the current enrollment that we're working on right now. The accounts also will grow through incentives, and we raise that money privately for the incentives such as perfect attendance, match savings, and parents' participation in financial education programs. Of all of the students that are in the program, we have 45% program participation, and what we define that as is accessing either one of the incentives that are available. Currently, we have over $1 million saved in assets. That's broken down by over 800,000 of that is the seed deposit, and then 226,000 is earned program deposits, so the incentives that they earn, and another 143,000 is parents' money actually that they put into the program themselves for their children. So again, our incentives are pretty simple. Bonus deposits for good attendance up to $30 a year. There's a Smart Saver match where we match savings dollar for dollar up to the first $100 saved, and participation in financial education courses up to $50 per year. So how does it help? Because $50 doesn't seem a lot to you, but it is everything to our children. Children with less than $500 saved are 3 times more likely to go to college and 4 times more likely to complete college than children without savings. Every pre-college dollar saved avoids $2 to $4 in student debt or student loans. And children's savings have the largest probability of reducing the racial wealth gap. If this program had been started back in 1979, it would have reduced the racial wealth gap between white and black families by 80%. And some of you may know that the current racial wealth gap between white and black families is 10 times. And College Kids is one of over 65 programs in 35 states, or 34 states, helping over 500,000 children save for their futures. So family engagement is how this program works. We try to stay in schools as much as possible. Just last Friday, we were at Farragut talking to kindergartners and reading books about piggy banks, and we give out piggy banks to all of our kindergartners or the ones that we can visit with. And it's an amazing, well, just the experience is amazing, because if you sit in front of a room full of kindergartners and you tell them you have $50, they have no concept of money and think you gave them $5,000. But, you know, it's those early conversations about money and about saving for your future that we want to start as early as possible. But what we've learned through our family engagement is that we have to meet the families where they are. High touch yields the most account engagement, and that's why we have 45% participation. It had been as low as 22%, and nationwide, the statistics are at least 3% family engagement in programs like this. And sending everything home in the backpack, there's a higher probability that the parents get it if we send it home in the backpack versus mail, because we know our children are very transient. So we did an experiment sending stuff home in the mail, and half of it came back. So we know that sending home in backpacks is probably almost the best way that we can get stuff home to our parents. And we color code the forms. One of the adjustments we made is that we color code the forms that they have to send back to us in order to participate in the incentives. These are examples of our enrollment forms here. We have, you know, it's big letters, the green form, the blue form, and what you have to do with either of those forms for participation in the program. These are all of our partners. The One-to-One Fund helps us raise money. First Financial Federal Credit Union is where all of the accounts are held, so the money is safe. The AEDI helps us do research on our families and see what's the best way to reach them and other incentives. Wells Fargo is a great financial partner of ours. Schnucks, we did a pilot program with Schnucks with doing a bonus card. And Busey Bank, we're working with a partnership with them right now to do a 4-week financial education class where if the parents complete it, they'll get $75, and then the student will get $75 in their account as well. And then, will this video show?
Yes.
So I want you to see this video.
I'm 8 years old. My name is Dylan Nolan, and I am 7 years old. My name is Marley Gill, and I am 7 years old. And we live in St. Louis. Our family smart. What is best for us? To make sure we have the chance to succeed. That means going to college. Well, college can be expensive. That's where the City of St. Louis Treasurer's Office turns start the College Kids Savings Program. It's simple. It's simple.
The College Kids Program provides a savings account for every kindergarten student in our public schools to start saving for college or vocational training, no matter who they are or which zip code they call home. Using parking fees and donations from people like you, the Treasurer's Office makes a $50 deposit into every account with bonus deposits for good attendance, personal savings, and when our parents or guardians participate in financial education.
For a small investment, we get a lot. Even students with just a few $100 saved are still 3 times more likely to go to college and 4 times more likely to graduate. After just 4 years, over 12,000 St. Louis kids have savings accounts more than $1 million. A small investment and some big opportunities that help us achieve our dreams. To learn more about the College Kids Savings Program and support our work, check out our website. And thank you for your support. Thank you for your support.
So two of our stars are in the audience. Thank you. And the reason why we do this work, because there's no better investment than in the future of our children. So I want to again thank the district for your support in this program, because it wouldn't be as successful as it is without the hardworking people in the schools, in the school district, in the school district office. Our new coordinator, Samantha March, happens to be my second cousin, so it makes it even better. But this program is as successful and has received several awards across the country because of your belief in me and in this program. So thank you, Dr. Adams, and thank you to the school board for keeping it going. So at this point, I'll take any questions you have.
I'll start. Thank you, Treasurer Jones, for being here. And I'll first start by saying I think it's a wonderful program, primarily because it gets students and families thinking about what they do when they leave our care before they even, right as they step one foot in the door. One question that I'm asking, the only question that I have, since the program is 5 years old, talking about elementary school students, when these future college kids become future college preteens and teens, has your program thought about what can we do, especially knowing once they start high school, there's this separation from the parent and the student that naturally happens, just thinking about how do we engage those teenagers, and not just around college or vocational programs, but just financial literacy in general, knowing that a bunch of our kids in the neighborhoods that they're in, they can pass 12 payday loan places, just their knowledge of that in relation to, again, with college, just that general financial literacy that they may need.
One of the things we've seen with one of the programs across the country is that they have started going into the school. So their oldest cohort is in the 9th grade. And so they've actually started going into the schools and taking deposits in the schools so the kids have more interaction with the credit union employees on a more frequent basis about their account and interacting with their account. That's something that we can do as our children get older, because our oldest cohort is in the 4th grade right now, so I'm thinking somewhere around middle school. And then also maybe we can change the incentive, so this program can be as creative as we want it to be. So we can change the incentives for children as they get older to interact more with the account, and watch that account grow even more based on the incentives we set. Yes, ma'am.
How do, just say for instance, if I had a 5th grader and we were moving out of state or something, how would a child take this program with them?
So they wouldn't be eligible for the incentives anymore, but the account is still theirs. So they can, and with the advances in financial technology nowadays, all you have to do is set up a direct deposit to still go to that account, or we can arrange for you to withdraw the funds and put that in a 529, and then also still contribute to a 529 in your new state.
So during the life of the program, when the child first starts this investment program, how are the parents educated on how to invest those funds along with their child?
So it's unlike a 529 program. This is just a deposit-only account at a credit union. It doesn't earn interest. So 529 is a state-sponsored program. This is just an account at a local credit union that doesn't earn interest, but it does earn incentives that they can earn through financial education courses, good attendance for the child, as well as match savings. So we send all of that information home when we open the account, and then they get an annual update. We send like an annual statement every year.
All right, thank you so much for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. I think any program that helps people save money and makes it easy to save money is a wonderful idea and just a great investment. So the attendance incentive, is that for perfect attendance or for good attendance? How does that work?
So it's $30 for perfect attendance and $25 up to perfect attendance. So we try not to make it too punitive. So you get some credit just for coming to school, but you get the full award if it's perfect attendance.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Are there any other questions, Mr. Treasurer? Again, we want to say thank you very much. Obviously, this has been a wonderful partnership over the last 5 years. We hopefully will continue this. And obviously, as you already indicated, to increase the number of young people who are participating. Thank you for coming tonight, and thank you for what you've done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we will move back into our regular agenda. Public comment is what we will have next. Thank you for being flexible to allow our invited guests to present to us. The first name on the public comment list is Arthurine Harris.
Season's greetings, board members. I stand before you in representation of myself and Black St. Louis Public School students. Today is, in fact, Human Rights Day. So in honor of my right to free speech in the season of giving, I will truncate my time so as to allow for other voices. And so, board members, I will present to you my Christmas list. 1, I demand increased funding for public schools in poor Black neighborhoods. 2, a moratorium on the proposed shuttering of the historic Sumner High School, the first Black high school west of the Mississippi River. 3, a moratorium on the proposed shuttering of all St. Louis public schools housed in high-crime neighborhoods, as defined by the St. Louis Police Department. 4, I'm requesting that Santa bring mirrors for each of you so that you can reflect on the decisions that you're making, which are literally killing Black kids. 5, a history book, so that you can see that your oppressive actions toward specifically poor Black students have placed you on the wrong page. 6, a dictionary, so that you can read the definition of the word legacy and truly understand that at present, your actions, or lack thereof, have written you in as the antagonist, the Grinch. 7, I want light to cast out the darkness consuming the St. Louis public school system and the city of St. Louis at large. Finally, I want hope for the future of Black kids residing within city limits. Happy holidays, St. Louis Public School Board, and a progressive new year.
Charles Babatunde Murphy.
Good evening, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank Ms. Jones. That's awesome, investing in our youth. That's just a beautiful thing. That's all I'm going to say right now. My name is Charles Babatunde Murphy. I am a teacher at Roosevelt as well as Local 420 building steward. You know, I was disappointed last time, but you know, I don't hate and I don't fight people. I fight ideas. So we be boxing, but I ain't abandoning no one. But I do want to say some of y'all probably heard about the survey that we did a little while back from Panorama. Well, the survey is out, and I want to say that survey says nepotism plus cronyism smells corruption. Survey says, how long will SLPS district leadership at all levels continue to pass the buck and point the finger at teachers while knowingly protecting insensitive, unethical, undemocratic, and inept leadership? Survey says, how long will SLPS district leadership at all levels continue to support hostile, inhuman relations toward hard-working staff, custodians, cafeteria workers, security? Survey says, how long will SLPS district leadership at all levels continue to pay our social workers tens of thousands of dollars less than a neighboring school district, causing so many social workers to seek better salaries and appreciation elsewhere? Survey says, how long will SLPS district leadership at all levels continue to ignore the persistent traumatic stress environment that crushes our students' dreams? Survey says, how long will SLPS district leadership at all levels continue to ignore that trauma that also eats away at staff's love and desire to create a better environment for themselves and students? Survey says it's long time overdue to fight the white supremacy and male domination that seeks to erase black, brown, and poor lives to make room for regentrification. Survey says it's time to use the buildings not to let some people make money off of them outside of us, but for, say, renewable energy, farming, and so forth, and employment of our own students. Survey says nepotism plus cronyism smells corruption. Survey says it's all about democracy. Please do not be mocking me. It's all about democracy.
Thelma Bailey.
Good evening, members of the board, Madam President, and distinguished members of the audience. I'm very glad to be here this evening to speak with you about something that I have a great passion for, the education and the betterment of our community. I appear before you at this time to share that the presence of this elected board in the position of governance is a long-awaited time. We have been disenfranchised from the governance of our district as citizens in our community because we elected people to represent us who were not given that opportunity. My hope is rekindled and my heart has a great sense of joy for the positive trajectory for the future of every child enrolled in the St. Louis Public School District, and that trajectory will be first and foremost in the day-to-day operations and the work of the school district. There was a meeting held at Vashon High School and people were asked to give ideas about ways that they thought that they could help and help better the community for the students in our district. And I can stand before you today to offer my services, and I request that the St. Louis Public School District enter into a contract with the organization that I founded in 2011 to coordinate and manage outdoor education programs for the students at Dunbar, Columbia, Farragut, and Bryan Hill schools respectively. During the past 8 years, my skills in this discipline have been sharpened by operating a successful day camp in Fairground Park. The camp has gone from a 3-week back-to-school safety camp to serving youth for 8 weeks from 8 o'clock in the morning to 4 in the evening. Our work is exemplary and our access is unparalleled in the inner city neighborhoods in which our participants are drawn. The St. Louis Torchbearers 2 is our organization, has earned the support of more than 50 major partners in the city of St. Louis for the students that come to our camp. I brought brochures for you, and I also want to, as a second request, ask that the board members look into a case that I have that is pending with the St. Louis Public School District. It's in the Court of Appeals, and I brought you letters showing that the St. Louis Public School District maintained that I was employed for a period of time and they did not pay me. They put on my W-2 that they paid me $1 each of those years. And also, I have a letter showing that I was forced to be a whistleblower in the school district because there were 60 children at Yateman School who were being denied their educational services. DESE investigated it, and I have the report of the findings from DESE showing that our school district was in non-compliance. And then they forced me to be a whistleblower and then started retaliating against me. Caused my career to
Ms.
derail.
Bailey, that's your time.
Thank you, and I have more information in my letter, and I appreciate this opportunity, and I look forward to the great things that you're going to do as the elected board members and governance for our district.
Jean Corbett.
Good evening, Board of Education and everyone in attendance. It has been 1 year since the elected board invited our group of CJA and Metro alum to present at your meeting regarding our proposal to rename Kennard for Betty Wheeler. In this past year, representatives from our group have attended and spoke to the board, sometimes to both boards, at nearly every meeting. We met with the former principal of Kennard CJA, the Equity and Inclusion Committee of the PTO, and even Dr. Adams himself. We resurrected research about the history of Samuel M. Kennard, a lieutenant and lifelong supporter of the Confederacy, which has been published by multiple local news sources. We proposed a simple Board of Education policy change, which was initially brought to us by Dr. Adams, that would break down barriers and allow for less restricted renaming criteria of school buildings. What else do we need to do to remove a despicable Confederate name from a St. Louis public school building? A building that houses a program with many equity issues of its own. It says a lot that the premier gifted school, where black students comprise less than 25% of its student body, is named after a Confederate. Still, even when this issue has been in the public sphere since 2015, well before our time at this, nearly 5 years, the Board of Education has not moved forward to make a change. If it is not possible to do a reasonable thing, like remove a Confederate name from a public school building, how will SLPS address those deeper issues of inequity?
Thank you.
We know you grapple with more complex issues. We appreciate what you do. This is a softball for the board. Take it. It is unacceptable to see inaction on this most basic request. I believe that you, the Board of Education, would like to see the name Kennard changed to reflect the mission of SLPS. Betty McNeil Wheeler's life was one of greatness, compassion, excellence, and equity in education. Betty's vision for her students, the children of SLPS, was that we would exceed all expectations, even our own, in a world that wasn't going to be easy to navigate. She is the reason we have not given up this charge. Our group includes well over 1,000 alumni, families, and staff of SLPS with various expertise and connections. We have offered our assistance and solutions. We are willing to do whatever we can. I believe that we can do this together. Let's make this change happen. It's time for you to push this through the bureaucratic process and close this chapter. Thank you.
Jennifer Putnam.
Good evening, my name is Jennifer Putnam, and I'm a member of the same group Jean spoke about. And I currently have 2 children at Kennard, and I am really disappointed that the name still hasn't changed. So I'm just here to urge you to make the change, and let's get it done. Thank you.
Carmen Nettles McNeil.
Good evening. My name is Nelson McNeil. I am a retired 2005 teacher from this lovely school district. I'm also the vice president of 9 school districts, namely St. Louis Public School System, Hazelwood, University City, Jennings, Pattonville, Rittenor, Ferguson, Florissant, Riverview Garden, and Normandy School District. I am here to thank you for receiving the information that I requested about the lawsuit between the St. Louis Public School System, which you did not enact. It was the other board against St. Louis, against our retirement system. I found out the status of it, and so that makes me give trust to you, because I see that you're doing your job. And when I'm here only to just enlighten you, I know this is just, you are now taking the office which you have duly received, and I understand that. So, but I would just like to bring you up on some issues that our St. Louis employees have not received a cost of living for 13 years. And some of the retired employees make less than $1,500 a month. Now, they receive money from Social Security, and I think I've only missed like one cost of living they didn't give from Social Security. So this money that's put into our pension fund is by employees. We put that money there, and we have 11 board trustees to watch over this fund. And so when you go to them, and I do go to represent and ask about, they refer me back to this board. And so I received a letter from this board saying, which I've already done research on it also. So it's like a cross beam. But the money is there because the employees put it there. And that money is for the employees to be used. So it may not even be the school board. It could be the pension board that is causing this pain to come to retired employees. So I just want you maybe to look into that, and because we're investigating it and looking into it, Missouri retired teachers, we are concerned about the employees of all of our school districts. Thank you.
Brand Holmes?
Yes, since you guys took leadership in July, we've been coming, well, I've been coming before that, but just since July this year, the community has raised several requests. Even at the meeting at Vashon, there were several suggestions, requests. To my knowledge, nobody has ever gotten any feedback. The questions that you put online, there were vague answers given, but no real answers. So every meeting we come here and we listen to you say thank you for the comment, but we never really get any answer, and we've been saying that for months. So for the next meeting, which is January, I would like for you guys to start off by responding to our requests. You take comments, that's fine, but we would like some answers to our questions. If I have any more time left, I would like to see the Tavelma Bailey, because I would like to know more about her being a whistleblower.
We don't yield time. You may use your time if you want, but cannot yield your time.
I want to hear about the whistleblower.
Ms. C. Jackson?
Hello, I want to first thank you for your listening ear. I am pleased with the transition to a positive environment, but there is still work to be done. On November 18, 2019, I had a meeting with the appointing authorities, including the principal of the school. You would think change would come. Well, at that same day, the assistant principal caused physical and mental harm to my grandchild. It was reported to the principal. This info should have been reported to me, but instead, my grandchild had to inform me. I took matters further because I knew it would have been swept under the rug. My other grandchild was sent out of the classroom every day with no explanation or schoolwork to occupy his time. My grandchildren has been traumatized. As they say, this puts the icing on the cake. Due to this, I have sought counseling for them and myself. Please put in to the administrator bullying. Please understand where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Mrs. Del Rio Sweet?
Good evening. Good evening. How are you? Good evening. I'm not going to stand here long because I think you all know, as I've been here 2-3 times before at Vashon High School, I've written several letters, sent several emails about the problems that I have had and my daughter have had within this school district. Dr. Adams, again, I am asking you for the answers to the questions that I asked you in your office personally. The meeting that we had after the protest I did outside of this office on September 4th, and we had a meeting and you promised me that you would give me answers to the questions that you actually made a copy of. These were all the questions that I had for you. You made a copy of this and ensured me that I would get those answers. To this day, I still have not. And I believe our meeting was on September 9th. Many of you may already know, my daughter did return back to a regular high school after leaving Gateway STEM, after being bullied and traumatized and retaliated against. I was banned from the school for speaking out. This type of behavior will no longer be tolerated. I am requesting for the last time at the next meeting, the beginning, not the middle, not the end, that you give me answers to the questions I've sent you in over 50 emails, not only to you, but to the principal, to several board members, that we get the answers, not only myself, but my daughter, my husband, and the rest of my family that will be here before the meeting. Until then, I hope we can come to an agreement.
Is there a motion to adopt and approve tonight's agenda? Is there a motion to adopt and approve tonight's agenda?
I move that we adopt and approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
Ms. Lewis?
Ms. D. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. S. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Ms. Miller is excused. Dr. Roberts?
Abstain.
Mrs. Val?
She's can't vote on the phone.
Mrs. Rhoda Collins?
Yes.
The motion has passed.
Is there a motion to approve the September 24th, 2019 tax rate and general business meeting minutes?
I move that we approve.
Second.
Any
September
discussion?
tax rate, general meeting minutes.
Thank you. Any discussion? Ms. Lewis?
Ms. D. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. S. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Ms. Miller? I'm sorry, Ms. Miller is excused. Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mrs. Fowler's on call, Lynn, no vote. Mrs. Rhoda Collins?
Yes.
Motion has passed.
Is there a motion to approve the October 8th, 2019 regular meeting minutes? I move that we approve the October 8th, 2019 regular meeting minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Lewis?
Ms. D. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. S. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Ms. Miller is excused. Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mrs. Fowler's on call, Lynn. Mrs. Rhoda Collins?
Yes.
Motion has passed.
We have one remaining presentation in the superintendent's report.
Yes, Mrs. Westland, if you come forward, please, at this point in time. Before Ms. Westland starts, just a few notes. On Thursday, we had our last superintendent's breakfast of the year with our faith-based partners. They're leading the charge to collect cold weather items for our students in need, including coats, socks, hats, and gloves. We are still accepting donations in the students and transition office and appreciate all those who can help us address these needs. On a related note, staff here at Central Office donated full Thanksgiving meals to more than 75 families in transition last month. I want to give a shout out, thanks to Mrs. Deidre Thomas Murray, Mr. Michael Brown, our homeless and foster care liaison, for leading this effort, and we will continue to try to do the same thing as we move forward for the winter break holidays. At this point in time, part of the presentation tonight, or the third and last presentation, is an update that the board requested relative to the Panoramic Survey, which is a student survey and a staff survey. Ms. Weston has led the charge in terms of the data relative to that. In your presentation, I received an email requesting questions that might make up the survey. Those are on the last piece of your document, and Ms. Weston might refer to that as well. There's also a Likert scale that kind of lays out what the responses were, because the responses were not always somewhat, they vary depending upon the kind of questions that were being addressed. You may have a draft and not the full presentation. I'll give you mine so you can see that one. You can start, Ms. Wesley.
Good evening. So I'm here tonight to give you an update on the rollout of our culture and climate surveys, which we began this past fall. So our agenda tonight looks like reviewing the survey purpose, background, and alignment to our strategic priorities, going through a high-level review of results, and then talking about our strategic planning and our next steps. We rolled this survey out for 3 big reasons. The first was to empower student and staff voice systemically in service of equity, which aligns to our work on Pillar 2 in the transformation plan. The second was to collect feedback from students and staff in order to improve our school and district climate and culture, ultimately in service of academics, which aligns to some of the work we're doing in Pillar 3. And finally, we wanted to explicitly work on improving supports and accountability at and between central office and schools. I'll highlight that the Human Resources Office is leading the charge around Pillar 3, but we are working in collaboration with the Academics Department and the Student Support Department in order to roll out this survey. The district chose to initiate these surveys to support several big picture strategic priorities we have. You can see these up here. They're around equity, staff culture, social emotional learning, culturally responsive environments, and central office effectiveness. And I say that because the survey is being used across multiple departments for various reasons. This also means that one of our biggest priorities as we roll out the data is ensuring that relevant leaders at every level have access to the data about their locus of control so that they can act on that data in addition to the district leadership acting on that data. Before I jump into what the data came back to us saying, I wanted to name a couple of our beliefs about how we are responding to this data. The first thing is that at the end of the day, we really believe our school leaders have a significant impact on culture and climate in schools. So one of our biggest priorities then is equipping school leaders with their data and the tools to analyze their data to act on that for their staff and their students. At the same time, we acknowledge that central office impacts district-wide conditions, and so central office also has to act on the data. We also believe that culture and climate impacts academic achievement. So any strategic actions we take need to align with our academic priorities. And finally, I've already said this, but I'll highlight it again. We believe this data is most helpful at the school or department level. Though we'll look at trend data, we believe that leaders having data about what their individual stakeholders said is going to be the most powerful for moving individual schools and departments forward. This slide lays out for you the structure and the content of the survey overall. So you can see that we had several different stakeholder groups: students in grades 3 through 12, teachers, school-based staff, which would be anybody that is not a teacher working in a school, principals, central office staff, and then there was a small family pilot that we're not going to discuss tonight, but we can discuss in the future. In terms of survey topics, the biggest picture topics were around climate and culture, relationships, leadership, professional learning and coaching, and then central office supports. Within the social emotional pilot, which was spearheaded by the Office of Student Support, 25 schools had their students also surveyed on specific social emotional competencies. That's specifically to help our student support team and academics team as they think about what it looks like to roll out more social emotional learning initiatives. And then on the far right, you can see the different surveys we initiated. They're slightly different for each stakeholder group. We administered the survey between September and October, and we are still determining when the second administration of the survey will be. I'll highlight that all surveys are completely anonymous. I'm the survey administrator, and even I do not know who did and did not respond to the survey. We intentionally partnered with an outside vendor to protect anonymity and confidentiality. All surveys were administered electronically as well. As a district, these are some trends that came out around our biggest strengths. So the first biggest thing we saw is that overwhelmingly our employees took the survey. It was not mandatory, yet they engaged in it. 85% of our school-based staff completed their surveys. Our elementary teachers build really strong relationships. Their students said, my teacher has a strong relationship with me. Our secondary students said, my teachers have really high expectations of me. Our school leaders build strong relationships with teachers. So our teachers said, overwhelmingly, a bright spot in their experience in their schools was their relationship with their leaders. And finally, in terms of the central office staff survey, overwhelmingly we heard staff in this building say that there's a lot of collaboration on their teams. So I wanted to call out high-level trends before we jump into each stakeholder's feedback. In terms of response rates, you can see the number of each stakeholder group that responded to each survey, as well as the percentage. And so out of all of our principals and assistant principals, 93% responded, 85% of teachers and school-based staff responded, 97% of central office staff responded, and 81% of students responded. Because the family was a pilot, I can't give you a percent on that. And so I'm going to jump into a high-level overview of what each stakeholder group shared with us. And so you'll remember that students were split into two groups, 3-5 and 6-12. If you look at the column on the far left, this shows you the survey topics. The next column over, percent favorable responses, shows you what percent of students responded favorably to that question. And so you'll see rigorous expectations and teacher-student relationships were strengths there. And then you can see engagement, 62, sense of belonging, 60, school climate, 55, school safety, 48. I want to call out the middle column as well. These are students that said that had a somewhat favorable response. And then the far right column is the percent of students that said essentially not at all. If you refer to your Likert scale reference at the back of that presentation, you can see how we calculated those. At the 6 through 12 level, you'll see the same categories and where our students responded. So again, you'll see rigorous expectations, school safety were bright spots, teacher-student relationships 47, engagement 32, sense of belonging 42, school climate 42. Our school-based staff, so this is anyone who works in a building except for teachers, also took the survey, and you can see the exact same breakdown here. So bright spots here were their sense of value in their buildings and their staff leadership relationships. Then you'll see school leadership came in at 65%, school climate 54%, professional learning 52%, feedback and coaching 48%, and district climate 39%. Our teachers had essentially the same set of questions as school-based staff, just slightly different because we might be asking a more targeted question around teaching versus work. And so you'll see, again, bright spots around staff leadership relationships, sense of value, school leadership, and then feedback and coaching came in at 49, school climate 44, professional learning 44, and district climate at 25. Central office staff responded as is shown on this slide. And so you'll see again, leadership staff relationships is a bright spot. Department climate came in at 56, professional learning 46, central office department support 44, feedback and coaching 44, and district climate 40. And then our school leaders, let me be clear, these are our principals and our assistant principals. I'm sorry, the slide just says principal. It should include APs as well. And so they called out feedback and coaching at 55% favorable, professional learning 45, central office supports 39, leadership 37, resources 33, and district climate at 28. So that was a high-level overview of what each stakeholder group shared with us in terms of feedback. I want to name then how we are responding to this data and rolling it out. So school leaders have actually had their student data for a couple of months. We pulled them together in October, specifically to go through student data. We brought in our vendor and trained them, and they began their analysis and goal setting. In November, we got the staff data back. And so we pulled together the district leadership team and spent a lot of time analyzing data. That analysis is ongoing, and the deputies, the department heads, and the networks are currently in their action planning and how they're responding to their individual data and the district data as a whole. This week, we pulled school leaders and released their school-based staff and teacher data to them, and they're going through the same action planning process to analyze their data and then highlight their strategic focus areas in the with the intent that in January, all of the leader groups I just named roll out their strategic action plans across the spring semester. You'll see on here that it says there's a re-administration of the survey. Again, as I already said, that is still being discussed and finalized when that second administration would be. And then in June, during principal training for the following year, we would hope to come back to this data and have school leaders weave in this data into their strategic action plans for the 2020-2021 school year. I also wanted to get a little bit more concrete with you, even though we have not finalized our next steps here in terms of what our focus areas for action planning might be. So at the school level, our network superintendents and leadership team analyzed the data and set a focus around rigorous expectations in school safety for elementary. At the secondary level, they set a focus around engagement and school safety. At the school level for teachers and staff, you'll remember I said we rolled out data this week to school leaders. So they are setting individualized goals and action plans in response to their unique data, and that will roll out beginning next month. At the district level, there's kind of two main groups we're looking at. The first is around how we better support school leaders, and so some sample ideas around strategic priorities and actions we may consider for next semester involve aligning the role of the network superintendent and getting really clear on how we're supporting principals with that role, and then also improving central office responsiveness to school leader needs. Under consideration for district level conditions are a couple of sample items would be expanding training for first year teachers. So thinking about how we onboard folks, what training and supports we provide them, etc. And then we are also considering adjusting a staffing model to make sure that we're meeting student social emotional needs. I want to make sure it's clear that those are just items that are under consideration. We are still in the throes of analyzing the data and setting our strategic action plans. And so as a quick summary, our next steps right now are that the district leadership team is going to continue their analysis of the data and finalize strategic priorities and goals, which will likely include some short-term pieces and some long-term pieces. And school leaders are setting their own school-specific strategic priorities and goals for school culture and climate for this year as well.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Before questions start, I'd like to make a couple of statements, and then obviously the board can jump in. Obviously, we met with principals today for 2 hours. I did to kind of walk through the data. We take this data very serious in terms of what it says. And so all data has context, but we own the fact that in many, many cases in many of our buildings and district-wide, there's some real challenges in terms of how students feel about safety and security and how staff feels as well. Some of it has to do with compensation, but also how they feel valued as employees in the district. And so part of what you will be getting back from us in January and what we commit to is that there'll be 1 or 2 big things that we're looking to do to try to change the context of how faculty and staff and students obviously as well feel about how they're being treated or valued in our school buildings. And so I kind of wanted to name that first. We also did a focus group with about 6 schools with parents as well. And while we didn't have a great deal of feedback from the parent piece yet, well, at some point in time we'll come back to give you some analysis around that as well. But at this point in time, if there are any questions to Mrs. Westland or to myself, we'll take them at this time. I know that one board member asked for the questions themselves. As you has already heard, this is an electronic survey. We're providing you some context of some questions that you have in blue, just to give you some idea. We can't likely download the document. We're still playing with that, and if there's a desire for the board to see every single question in every single category, we can look to try to provide that to you as well. But I gave you some sample of what that looks like in all 4 of the categories that were articulated tonight. So without further ado, I'll take any questions of Ms. Weston will as well.
I'd like to know, I understand the conversation about family, and there were just a few families that were interviewed, but I don't know, it just seems to me that the family would be the most important element of the survey.
Yeah.
Well, this is not a family survey, it's a student survey. We extended the opportunity, since we were doing this survey, for 6 schools to do that, but it is not a parent survey. This is a student and staff survey that was authorized by the board, I think when it was approved sometimes in August or September. And so while we understand exactly what you're saying, this is not the kind of survey aligned for that particular purpose.
Okay, well, I'm really hoping in the future that we'll do that as soon as possible. But I guess my first question is on elementary. When you talk about rigorous, what exactly are you saying?
So sample questions for rigorous expectations would include things like, my teacher makes me explain my answer, my teacher pushes me to master the concept, these types of things. So it's about how their teachers are pushing.
So this is something, an action plan that you're going to implement for elementary school students as a result of the data that you received from the survey?
Yes, at the school level. And so though that's a district level focus, because the district data said there's a trend of needing to focus on this, each school has its own data. And so for me to say exactly what Monroe needs to do would not be appropriate. Monroe needs to analyze their own data, their own subgroup data, their own full question set, and determine with their team how they want to respond to that.
So the data you're looking at is district-wide data, but there's individual data just as you're looking at it for every single school. And so every single school will come up with their own action plan relative to the items that they felt were the critical items based on what the data said.
I have a question, Dr. Adams, and I think I heard the word overwhelming used often, and I want to know what constitutes overwhelming, because looking at the percentages in this report, it's pretty alarming.
And overwhelming.
I'm sorry, I did not understand the first part of the question.
Let me try to rephrase it. I'm looking at the percentages like district level strengths. And I heard the word overwhelming support, or the feedback was overwhelmingly positive, but these percentages do not speak to overwhelming.
Are you talking about an area that says strengths?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm starting there with strengths.
Yes, what we're basically indicating is that based on the data that we have and the national trend data, because there's some national data aligned to this as well, those were being viewed as positive or strengths as opposed to weaknesses. That is why that is called, and I don't know that the word overwhelming is there because I don't have my presentation, I gave it to Ms. Jones, but what we're saying is those were identified as some strengths. And I want to use the word overwhelming strengths, but based on the national data, those will be considered strengths in terms of number of persons who took the assessment and so forth, in the 5 categories that you're looking at.
Okay, let me follow that up then. If we have a percentage that says 32% around engagement, you're telling me that that's encouraging?
No, I'm not.
Okay, I just want to understand how you explain that.
I'm not explaining it. What I'm indicating to you is the areas that were identified as strength. That's not indicated as a strength area. The green is indicated as a strength area. Only the green. The areas that you see in blue, especially when you see it under a certain percentage, under 50%, is a challenge.
Okay.
Okay, you follow what I'm saying? Only the green areas would be considered areas, quote unquote, that would be identified as strengths.
Okay.
Okay?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So as it relates to best practices with Panorama, what is the time, and if there are any, that's supposed to be allotted, so after this is implemented, like for staff to really, so I see for the deputy and network superintendent action planning, it's basically 1 to 2 days. And so I guess for efficient implementation for the next school year, I just want to make sure that enough time is being allocated in each, category of individuals so that, the plans are, or whatever it is they want to push forward is successful?
Go to that bullet if you don't mind, please, because I don't have mine.
These are ranges.
Go back, please. So if you're indicating the 9th to the 13th is when we presented the information to principals.
Okay.
Principals won't be providing us something back until January, so they literally have about 30 days because part of the turnkey is that they're meeting with their staffs this week and next week and the first week in January because they have to have some discussions around them. Principals can't own this data all by themselves. They have to have dialogue with their staffs if anything is going to change. And sometimes, well, not sometimes, all of the times, teachers need to know what the data says. And right now, teachers don't know what the data says. Who knows what the data says right now are principals. They received it last Tuesday, and the training took place this morning such that they could clearly understand and come up with an action plan over the next 30 days that they'll provide to us in January.
Thank you for that feedback. So to additionally, or to add on to that, I guess what I'm wondering is over that 30-day period, are our teachers, I guess, out of classroom instruction and their lesson planning, are they doing this after school? Are they meeting sometime before school? Like, when are they to get this done?
That's really determined by the principal, but normally principals have a leadership team and they have some conversation with their leadership team. There's likely going to be 2 meetings. A meeting that will take place over the next 9 days because principals can meet with teachers after school, and then probably a meeting sometimes in January. The format that they use in terms of engaging teachers really germane to the principal. They have PLCs or data meetings that take place during the school day, during their planning periods. It just depends. Every single high school has I want to say a 90-minute planning period. And so they have some opportunity during the school day to do so. In middle school, elementaries normally get a planning period during the time that students are taking art, music, and electives. And so it really is germane to how they want to turnkey this. We've given them some suggestions, but they are determining that themselves over the next 9 days.
What were the suggestions?
During their planning period, during their after school, before school, and department meetings and team meetings, they'll have opportunities to do so to engage their staff, but the intent is that all of them will do that in some way, shape, or form.
Thank you, Dr. Adams.
Yes, ma'am.
My last question is about students. How are you going to get the feedback from the students?
The students have already provided the feedback, and that was if you go back to that slide, please, Ms. Weston. The student survey data was provided to us sometimes in September, October, is when it was provided. So staff has already come up with plans to address the deficits around school safety and all of those kind of areas at their school by looking at the data, because you're getting an overview. There are 8 or 9 or 10 questions that are listed under each one of those categories. And so it really might be helpful to give everybody a hard copy, because maybe you can understand better exactly what the responses are, because there are detailed questions under each one. And so those detailed questions, if you see school safety, it says 48% here for 3 to 5. Under school safety, there might be 8 questions that are germane to what school safety is defining. And based upon those questions, then staffs are working to address what those outliers might be, or the weaknesses, if you will, that students indicated were not favorable in that particular area.
And so how often are we as a school district going to follow up with the students' feedback to see what kind of progress we're making?
Excellent question. That's what we're debating right now. We're determining if it's appropriate in 8 weeks to turn around and give another survey again, or wait until the same time next year to get this survey such that we could get data. And so it's just a matter of the timing in terms of when we look to do that. We have not determined that yet because, again, we just finished the survey in November, the first week of November for students and for staff, and giving it to them again before putting some action plans in place might be too soon to see if there's any difference. And so we don't want to wear people out giving a survey, because it was a time-intensive survey for them to go online and do that. And we want to be credible in terms of doing something about the data. We don't want to just do it again just for the sake of doing it again without having a real plan around what might change as a result of it. And that's why we're not doing 8 categories. We're only looking at 1 or 2 categories. Just to be clear about it, this is not going to change overnight quickly. Okay, this is a deep challenge that we have in terms of looking at this data, and it's in context. In context, some staff may think differently around certain kinds of things based on leadership, based on a number of different factors. So I want to be clear that the survey data all by itself needs to be taken in context. It's not a be-all and end-all, but it's one part of what we're looking at as we look at how staff feels and how student feels. But the intent, quite frankly, Ms. Jones, is that we are determining if we're going to give it again before the end of the year or give it at the same time next year. Those are the two categories that we're looking at.
I guess my last question is, are we paying this vendor once again for the test results, or do we have enough information to do this internally?
We don't have the capacity to do this survey, the same kind of survey. We don't have the capacity to do the same kind of survey. The cost that we pay for the vendor covers the entire year that we do it. So if we do it the second time, and correct me if I'm wrong, that cost is already covered.
Correct.
That cost is already covered. So if we give it this year, the contract is for 1 year, and so June 30, we would ask them to likely to go back and extend it for 6 more months at no cost, such that we could do the survey again in the fall. But then there's no other cost. What we might look to do, based on what you're indicating here, is do some synopsis, maybe not as rigorous a survey as was done before. That's done by us as opposed to them. But then you have some real challenges around what the data say for us and what the data say for them. Yes, ma'am.
So I think, as my colleagues have shared, this is somewhat upsetting data. I have to be honest, I looked at it the first time and I had to set it aside and come back. What I'm really curious about is looking at, under teacher and school-based staff, the numbers for sense of value, school climate, and district climate. And so it's interesting to me that SLPS sense of value is the highest of those three numbers. So what I would be interested in seeing is some type of national comparison, because what I'm wondering is some of the school climate and district climate part of the teaching and school-based profession nationally, or is this specific to our district? So, you know, is it that teachers all over are frustrated and everywhere we see these numbers, and it's not, because it is striking that the highest of those three is the sense of value, so they feel valued here, but there's something about the school climate and the district climate. So would we be able to get a comparison to similar districts?
So we do have some of that data. The challenge as we tease the data out is, this is our first time giving the assessment, and we are asking the company if they have similar data for the very first time. The data they have seems to be data that indicates districts have been doing the survey for several years as opposed to the first time. So we have teased that data out, and we're still looking to tease that data out, but we do have some national data aligning with our data. The challenge is it first year data with an urban district for the very first time. And so that's the challenge that we are, because we were going to show you that tonight as well, but it wouldn't be apples with apples, and that's the challenge that we have.
One last question.
Mm-hmm.
Under structure and content, under the socio-emotional pilot, for the 25 schools, how were they chosen? And I apologize if you've answered this already, but how were the schools chosen for that?
So, Mr. Brown, if you don't mind, I think we provided that to the board at the last, when this was approved. I just don't remember the details of what the response was.
So those schools were chosen by the 25 comprehensive schools, the schools that were on the state list as a low 5% of the state. So those schools were chosen, those 25 schools, plus I think we did 8 other schools.
Yeah, it was the focus and the focus and comprehensive schools. So those were the low achieving schools based upon state data, and that have been already identified by the state. And so that's how those schools were selected. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thanks for the reconfirmation. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So as a board member, I understand that our focus is definitely on the end, so looking at the data and not necessarily the means, but I would make one urge for the means is that hearing a plan and looking at the timeline, the approach to improvement, which does take time since very top down. So my urge, especially in places where looking at the questions, the actual sample questions for district climate, it assesses the extent to which I, as a teacher, feel like I'm being supported by central office staff. In the strategic plan, it's the people who I don't feel supported by on that 40, 28% average, whatever it is. Those are the people who are creating the plan to support me. So to me, that there seems like if there is more of an approach that, and I don't know what the means are, but a more of an approach to say, okay, well, how do these people want to be supported? Because I assume that the district already has a plan for supporting teachers, and I assume that there's some knowledge of these numbers right now, but that current plan doesn't seem to be working. So just to make sure that it's not just a new plan, but an actual plan informed by the data that's here. And I think that, like you said, there are many factors to it, so I think it makes sense for the district to understand those factors. Because if we just create a plan, then it's, what's the point of the plan? We might get the same numbers, but now we just have a new plan.
What you say, Adam?
Duly noted. I think your comments are relevant. I think the only, not challenge, but the only concern I would have is, again, we're looking at one category and there are 8 other questions under that. And so that's what the principals are going to be doing. In addition to that, Mr. Lang and board as well, there were multiple comments that were provided from every single school, from every single principal, and we're also teasing out the actual comments from what people said, because I think that's the relevant piece. The remarks that everybody wrote are really much more powerful, quite frankly, than the data point for me anyway. And so we're looking at exactly what people said about what they actually needed. Some of that is captured in the comments, and so we are looking at that as well. Not every single one, but to your point, I think it does make some sense. So we'll go back and look at how we are making sure that the persons who are most impacted by this are the first persons to give us the feedback about what needs to be done. So point well taken. Thank you, Ms. Wesley.
Moving on to the consent agenda, is there a motion from the board? Or first I should ask, are there any items that you wish to take separately? And is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Please include the numbers. The bylaw, do you want to pull that up?
Audit.
Audit. That is not on the consent agenda, though, so that'll be a separate motion. Is there a motion for the consent agenda?
Is that including all the way to consent agenda 12-10-19-09?
It could, depending on how the motion was made. Would you like to take the first 6? And then we can do the new items separately if you'd like.
Okay, to my understanding, the CAF was, for that agenda item was part of the audit. Is that not the case?
Is it? Okay, I'm sorry, my apologies. So we'll take the item 9 separately?
Okay.
Thank you.
So I move that we approve agenda items 12-10-19-01, or item 12-10-19-01 to item, do I need to say all of them?
No, just you can
Okay,
say
through item 12-10-19-08.
Second, any discussion on these items? Ms. Lewis?
Ms. D. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. S. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Ms. Millington? Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mrs. Violence unconference? Mrs. Fermi Collins?
Yes?
The motion has passed.
Is there a motion to approve item 12-10-19-09?
I'll move that we approve item 12-10-19-09.
So, excuse me, I will ask Mrs. Banks one question. We use the word approve here. Should that word be accept or approve? It should be accept, so we could make one correction, because I remember what the auditor said, you're not really approving it, you're accepting the annual report.
So that, yeah, and that's why I was gonna bring it up once we had time for discussion.
Thank you.
But I think it's actually 2 separate things.
Mrs. Banks, you want to come forward so I could be absolutely sure I don't want to say anything out of turn? You could be 100% right, Mrs. Banks.
You could include approve and accept and approve.
No, I mean, I think that the comprehensive annual finance report and the actual audit are 2 separate items.
Ms. Banks, could you provide some guidance on all of us, please?
Yes, I know that historically it has always been in one board resolution that we approve the comprehensive annual financial report and the compliance report.
So what are you saying? Approving both of them?
So.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So we would need to make a motion to change that language then to accept.
Your motion, with the pending motion, with the agreement of the motion maker, you can modify your motion. If there is no objections to you modifying your motion, and your motion can be modified to accept, to approve and accept, or accept and approve.
So can I, Ms. Lewis, was there a second to that motion?
No, it was not.
Okay. So if you want
So
to
then you can
make a fresh
withdraw,
motion.
you can withdraw the motion, the original motion, and then make a second, make a new motion.
So yeah, I will withdraw that motion.
Would you like to make a new motion?
Sure, I'll make a new motion to accept item, accept item 12-10, consent agenda item 12-10-1909 with the language modified to reflect that approved should be accept.
Second. Any discussion on this? So I have a question. So as our representative for the board on the audit committee, is it your recommendation that we accept the report?
Yes, with explanation. So
Sure.
I think that, again, nothing will technically change the report because the report is just a report of the findings. So if anything changed, it would be to do an additional or like do a new audit or some addendum to the audit. So I do believe that everything that we need to review is in there. However, I think that there is the other side in terms of board comfortability. So one thing we talked about in our audit committee is that this is new to the board and new to the audit committee members, or me as an audit committee member. So I think for the sake of comfort, if the board feels more comfortable being able to have a discussion and review the items, that I think that is also okay, given that we do have a work session coming up next week to be able to do so. I don't think it'll eventually change our decision, but I think to increase that comfort and familiarity, it would be okay.
So are there questions for Mr. Lane or Ms. Banks if we have that ability?
I just want to say that I agree that we should review this at a work session, and I've said this at multiple meetings, that it's important that we make educated decisions. And although this may not change, what's in the report, it's just important that we have done our due diligence in looking at these documents before making a decision on them as a team.
Is the board ready to vote, or is there a motion to, Mr. St. Omer, postpone or withdraw?
You could call the motion approved, or if this motion has been made and seconded so that it has to be backed
Finished,
up.
sure.
Yes, you either complete it, do you know what I mean?
Okay, so for the sake of efficiency, would it be more efficient to have a vote, and if it's a no vote, then have another motion to move it to the work session, or just withdraw it?
Correct.
Okay, but if we vote no on it, it won't automatically be moved to a work session.
I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't have my Robert rules, I did not bring them down with me. That is a very technical question that I am not prepared to be able to answer off the top of my head.
So let me ask this, is the board ready to vote?
I would rather just withdraw the item until the 17th.
Please do.
Because
If you would withdraw your motion, Mr. Hammond.
So I withdraw the motion to approve agenda item 12-10-19-09.
The person who seconded it also has to.
I withdraw my second.
So I ask that this item be placed on the agenda for the 17th.
So do we need a motion for that?
No, not necessarily.
I'll put
It's
it
a
on
brand
next
new
time.
meeting. We just have to notice the public, that's all. So I'll ask that this item be withdrawn and placed on the agenda on the 17th.
Board member reports. Mr. Lane?
If I
I'm
could.
sorry.
If I could, because the board did adopt the agenda, and the agenda does include this consent agenda, it is my recommendation that the board make a motion to formally move and second to the work session. And move to amend this agenda, remove this item from the agenda, vote to remove this item from the agenda. You guys created this Robert's Rule nightmare for me. So I'm just, that is, the problem we are in right now is you have voted to approve the agenda. This item is on the agenda as approved.
So I've got you. I move that we amend the agenda to remove item 1210-1909. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Lewis?
Ms. D. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. S. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Ms. Miller is excused. Dr. Roberts? Yes. Mrs. Bowles is on conference. Mrs. Rowley Collins?
Yes.
Motion
Is there a motion to move this to the work session on December 17th?
I move that we move, well, I guess it's not an agenda item anymore, it's been removed, but I move that we move consent agenda item 12-10-19-09 to the December work session with the edit to change the word approve to accept.
Second. Any discussion? Ms. Lewis?
Ms. D. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. S. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Ms. Miller is excused. Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mrs. Bowles is on conference. Mrs. Rowley Collins?
Yes.
The motion has passed.
And this concludes our Robert's Rules of Order workshop for the day. Board member reports. Mr. Lane?
So my only report is from the Ad Hoc Budget Committee, and I'll keep it as short as possible. So the Ad Hoc Budget Committee met last Friday, and no decisions were made. We are in a place, just for full transparency, to make sure that we are at a level of awareness and understanding when it comes to our actual budget before we make recommendations to the board. So we're still settling into that place of awareness and understanding. So Ms. Banks and Dr. Adams gave a overview of the actual budget book, which we received at our first Ad Hoc Budget Committee meeting, but we were able to dive deeper and engage in conversation, ask questions so that we fully understand what the budget book is, understand more about the budget so that we can make more informed recommendations and decisions going forward. Some items that were discussed in addition to the actual budget book was talking about what equity means, because we had to understand that definition. So what equity means and what it means in the context of our schools. In addition to that, we briefly touched on, which will be the first agenda item for our next meeting, school leadership in how leadership affects budget decisions. And there was one other topic that I missed, but yes. So we are still diving into that level of understanding before we come to the board with recommendations. And after we get that, I will bring up all those recommendations to my fellow board members and also to you as the public. But those meetings are here, they are posted, so members of the community are always welcome to attend.
None at this time.
Dr. Roberts?
Just a couple of things. I've had the opportunity to visit every school in the district, and I was really overwhelmed with what I saw there, and it's in stark contrast to me to this culture and climate survey. So there's some wonderful things going on in our buildings. Secondly, I did a survey of this board to move forward to explore the opportunity to host the Council of Great City Schools. And so there were 5 board members who agreed that we should pursue and explore that opportunity.
Ms. Jones?
I have none at this time.
So I have a couple updates. I was able to meet with the president of the PAC earlier this weekend, and so we're looking for ways to strengthen communication between the organizing body for parents in the district. We are also working on a strategic plan for the town halls that will be upcoming in the second semester, so you will be continuing to hear information about those as they are planned and scheduled. I did also want to make one announcement. Part of our consent agenda tonight was to adopt a new bylaw regarding public comment. So we are extending our official public comment period to 45 minutes. So that is 15 minutes longer than we previously had in the bylaw. We may be allocating some portions of that to be before and after the meeting, as we know that there are some items that come up during our meetings that you want an opportunity to comment on after you've heard about them, just like there are things that you want to come to us and tell us at the beginning. So at our next work session, we are going to be looking at how we're going to implement this new bylaw and draft some procedures that we will make very clear at the January meeting. But I just wanted to give a heads up that there are some changes. That total time officially will be 45 minutes. In the past, that has not been enforced, but we will be enforcing that going forward at the 45 minutes, depending on what, or not depending on, it will be 45 minutes total. Some may be at the beginning and some may be at the end. So we'll make sure to share that with you at the beginning of the January meeting. With that, is there a motion to, sure, no, go ahead.
I apologize. This will be the last board meeting before winter break. The Board of Education does have a work session on the 17th of December, which has already been said. The last day of school for students will be December the 19th. The 20th will be a day of record keeping for staff, and staff will start their break on December the 23rd. Class will resume again on January the 6th. Just want to put that out there for anyone who might be watching.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, they all want.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Ms. Lewis?
Ms. Diamond Jones? Yes. Ms. S. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Mays?
Yes.
Ms. Miller is excused. Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mrs. Bowles, unconference. Mrs. Brody Collins?
Yes.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
So board members, please leave your board books, the binder. You can take anything out of them that you want. Please leave the binder, and then your